Surprise, Nora. My parents will move into your master suite, family under one roof so efficient. The words hit me before the smell of wet paint did. My living room was stripped bare. Harvey's handmade oak tables gone, our wedding photo replaced by a minimalist mirror that didn't reflect the life we built. My name is Nora Caldwell. I'm 64 years old, and I came home from a business trip to find my house remodeled, my memories erased, and strangers moving in. But what they didn't know was, before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it comes wearing perfume and a polite smile while it signs your name on papers you never saw. When I was younger, I used to think the sound of a table saw was the heartbeat of a family. Harvey and I built our first home with our own hands, a 2-story craftsman with cedar siding and a porch big enough for Thanksgiving dinners and Sunday naps. The scent of fresh-cut oak clung to his shirts, and when the evening light spilled through the workshop windows, the sawdust looked like gold dust suspended in air. That house wasn't just where we lived. It was where we built our lives board by board, promise by promise. Harvey was the dreamer. I was the ledger keeper. Together we made Caldwell Builders into one of the most trusted firms in Wilmington. We took pride in never missing a payment, never leaving a client disappointed, and never letting family come second. At least that's what I believed. I still remember the first time Marcus brought Cassidy home. She floated through our house like someone walking through a museum, touching everything but seeing nothing. "This is quaint," she said, running a manicured finger over the banister Harvey had carved himself. Marcus beamed proud and nervous while I smiled politely and tucked the word quaint into my mental ledger. Even then, something about her tone made the back of my neck prickle. But Marcus was in love, and Harvey, always the optimist, said, "She's young, Nora. Give her time to understand what we built." I did. I gave her years. After Harvey died, the silence of the workshop was unbearable. I'd catch myself listening for the low hum of his planer or the clatter of his toolbox, and when it didn't come, I filled the void with work. Marcus had taken over field operations, and I handled the books just like always. We were still a team. Only now that team included Cassidy. At first, she played her role well. "Let me help you with invoices, Mom," she'd say, voice all honey. "You shouldn't be buried in paperwork at your age." The first time she said "at your age," I laughed it off. The third time, I stopped laughing. Still, I let her in. She started with little things, printing checks, organizing receipts, setting up new vendor profiles. I told myself it was practical, that she was just making the business more modern. But there was something about the way she smiled when she clicked submit payment that made me uneasy, like she was enjoying a private joke. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment my instinct whispered something's wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd stopped by the office unannounced, bringing lunch for Marcus. Cassidy was at the front desk, her phone on speaker. I heard her laugh, sharp, rehearsed, and say, "No worries, just send it to Seacoast Finishings LLC, same address as before." When she saw me, she flinched, then covered it with a grin. "Oh, hi, Nora, just finalizing a materials order." That night I couldn't shake the name she'd said. Seacoast Finishings. It didn't ring a bell. So I went home, brewed a pot of coffee, and started combing through our vendor list. There it was, buried among legitimate suppliers, a company with no website, no business registration, and a P.O. box instead of an address. The invoices looked real enough, but something about the item descriptions was off. Generic materials, inflated costs, no photos. I remember the moment like it happened yesterday. I printed one of the invoices, held it under the lamplight, and felt my stomach drop. The image attached wasn't from one of our job sites. It was a photo I'd seen months earlier in an architecture magazine. Cassidy hadn't just made up vendors. She was stealing stock photos and building an empire out of thin air. I didn't tell Marcus that night. I couldn't. He was sitting on the couch helping Lily with her math homework, laughing like he hadn't in years. How could I destroy that? How could I tell my son that the woman he loved was robbing him blind? Instead, I told myself I'd handle it quietly. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, an accounting error. Maybe she'd made a mistake. The next morning, I called her to a coffee meeting at the little diner near the Cape Fear River. Rosie's Diner, red vinyl booth's jukebox that hadn't worked since the 90 Seconds waitresses who knew everyone's usual order. She arrived 20 minutes late, smelling like expensive perfume and victory. "Sorry, traffic was awful," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I set down my coffee. Cassidy, I found some irregularities in the business accounts. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. Irregularities. Payments to Seacoast Finishings, vendors that don't exist, fake materials invoices. Do you know anything about that? For a split second, I saw something flicker behind her expression, something cold and calculating. Then she laughed lightly. Oh, that. It's just a placeholder account we use for subcontractors who aren't registered yet. I was going to update it. You've been using it for 6 months. She stirred her coffee slowly. Marcus said you worry too much. It's all handled. Her tone was polite, but every word felt like a blade. That night I went home and sat on the porch Harvey built, staring at the dark outline of the workshop. For 30 years that space had been a symbol of trust and creation. Now it felt like a ghost. I should have called the police right then, but love makes fools of us all, love for family most of all. 3 weeks later, the first cracks appeared in my everyday life. I'd find my reading glasses missing only to discover them in the freezer. The stove knobs turned off when I swore I'd left them on low. Emails I didn't remember sending showed up in my outbox. Cassidy would tilt her head sympathetically and say, "Nora, have you been feeling okay? Sometimes stress can make us forget things." At first, I blamed grief. Then I started to notice a pattern. Every mistake happened after she'd been in the house, and every time she was right there to help. The moment that broke something inside me came on Lily's birthday. I'd spent days baking her cake, 3 layers pink frosting sugar roses, just like she'd asked. The kitchen smelled of vanilla and buttercream when Cassidy swept in with her mother, a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a shopping channel commercial. "Change of plans," Cassidy announced, clapping her hands. "We're going with a modern gold theme instead, more Instagram-friendly." They took down my handmade decorations, replaced them with cheap balloons and foil banners. When I tried to object, Cassidy said brightly, "Oh, don't worry, Nora. The kids love when things look professional." That night, when everyone left and the frosting had hardened on the leftover cake, Marcus hugged me and said Cassidy really outdid herself this year. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat in the dark. For the first time since Harvey died, I cried, not for the house, not even for the business, but because I realized my son couldn't see me anymore. Cassidy had erased me so completely that even my love for my granddaughter had become an inconvenience. But what I didn't know then was that she was just getting started. The thing about slow poison is that you don't taste it at first. You only realize what's happening when it's already in your blood. That's how Cassidy operated, quiet, consistent, and impossible to spot until it was almost too late. A few weeks after Lily's birthday, Marcus suggested very casually that maybe I should take it easy. He said it while pretending to read the paper as if the words hadn't been rehearsed. "Cass says you've been overworked, Mom. Maybe you should let her handle the finances for a bit." Handle the finances. My pulse spiked, but I kept my voice even. "Marcus, I've been managing Caldwell Builders accounts for 30 years. He shrugged. "I know, but technology's changed. Cass is good with that stuff, spreadsheets, vendor software, all those online payments." I stared at him, realizing that the son I had taught to measure twice before cutting once had stopped measuring altogether. "Marcus, did you authorize her to open new accounts?" His eyes darted away. "I signed some forms she brought from the office. Just standard updates." Standard updates. The phrase that would later unravel everything. That night I opened my filing cabinet, the one Harvey had built for me when we started the business. I found the corporate bank statements printouts from the last 6 months, and there it was, Cassidy's fingerprints in every line. Payments to Road Social LLC, Coastal Build Supplies, Seacoast Finishings, different names, same P.O. box. The amounts grew month after month, 500 here, a few thousand there. Nearly $180, 0 inches total. The next morning I made an appointment with our family physician, Dr. Naomi Ellison. I needed her signature for a life insurance claim Harvey had left unfinished, but when I arrived, she looked at me strangely. "Nora," she said gently, "Cassidy mentioned you've been having some memory issues lately, forgetting appointments, misplacing things." I froze. "She told you that?" "She's concerned, that's all. She asked if we could schedule a cognitive evaluation." The room seemed to tilt. Cassidy wasn't just stealing money, she was laying groundwork to steal my entire life. I smiled tightly. "Thank you, doctor, but I think I'll pass on that for now." Driving home, my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. For the first time, I wasn't scared of losing the business. I was scared of losing myself. The signs multiplied after that. One morning I found my checkbook missing, only for Cassidy to find it in the mailbox 2 days later. She said I must have dropped it. Another day she mentioned casually I talked to Mom about how exhausting paperwork must be for you. We were saying maybe you'd be happier if we took care of things. By October, she had moved her parents into my house without warning. I came home from a supplier meeting to find a moving truck in the driveway, her father carrying boxes through my front door. "Surprise," Cassidy sang from the porch. "We talked about this, remember?" "We did not." She laughed, brushing past me. "Oh, you must have forgotten. Stress does that." Her parents, Diane and Walt Rhodes, acted like they owned the place. Within a week, they'd rearranged my kitchen, claimed my master suite, and started eating through my groceries like termites. Walt parked himself in front of my TV every evening, watching football reruns at full volume. Diane criticized everything I cooked. Too salty, she'd sniff. Cassidy likes lighter food. I slept in the guest room that used to be for visiting relatives. Now I was the visitor. Through it all, Marcus looked tired, torn. "It's temporary," he'd say. "They'll find a place soon." But they didn't. And every day I stayed quiet, I lost more ground. The breaking point came on the night of the hurricane warning. The power had gone out, rain slashing against the windows, thunder shaking the walls. I went to check the fuse box when I heard voices in the kitchen, Cassidy and Walt. "She's slipping faster than I thought," Cassidy said. "By Christmas, the court will sign the guardianship papers. Once that's in place, we can sell the property and move." Walt grunted. "What about the company?" "I've got that covered. Marcus trusts me completely. Once she's declared incompetent, power of attorney passes automatically." My stomach turned to ice. The next morning, I went to the public library and started researching. Words like power of attorney, elder financial abuse, fraudulent guardianship filled my notebook. I printed articles until the printer ran out of paper. When I left, I wasn't the same woman who'd walked in. I was a woman with a plan. I started documenting everything: dates, transactions, conversations. I installed a discreet voice recorder inside my notebook and a hidden camera in the living room clock. Mr. Walters, my elderly neighbor, offered to share his doorbell footage after hearing shouting one night. "Just in case," he said with a wink. The footage showed Cassidy hauling my boxes out of the house at 1 a.m., laughing with her mother. Later, she'd claim I'd thrown away my own belongings during a breakdown. When Marcus confronted me about forgetting to pay the electric bill, I handed him the receipt. "It was paid," I said quietly. "Cassidy canceled the autopay." He frowned. "Why would she?" "Because she wants me to look incapable." He shook his head, unwilling to believe it. "Mom, she's trying to help." "Marcus, she's trying to erase me." He left without replying, but that night I saw the confusion in his eyes, a seed of doubt. Still, Cassidy wasn't done. A week later, I found an email draft left open on her laptop. She'd carelessly left it on the dining table. It was addressed to Dr. Ellison, detailing recent cognitive lapses and increasing paranoia from me. My name was in the subject line under guardianship application documentation. I didn't delete it. I photographed it. And then I waited. The waiting was the hardest part, pretending not to know, pretending to be the confused, helpless woman she was painting me as. Every fake smile, every patronizing pat on the hand, it was all fuel. When Thanksgiving came, Cassidy staged what she called a family gratitude dinner. She invited half the neighborhood, filled the house with cameras and fairy lights, and filmed everything for her social media channel. "To show how we care for our elders," she said sweetly into her phone, "because family means helping them transition gracefully when they can't handle life alone anymore." That was the moment I realized she wasn't just cruel. She was building a narrative, one that ended with me in a nursing home and her holding the deed to my life. But what Cassidy didn't know was that I had already copied every file, every forged invoice, every email. I had the footage, I had the proof, and I had one advantage she didn't expect: patience. Because if you've ever worked with wood, you know this. The strongest cuts take time. You measure, you mark, and when the line is perfect, you make your move. And my line was nearly ready. The storm didn't end that night, it just changed shape. Cassidy traded her sweet smiles for a subtler cruelty, one that showed up in small, deliberate humiliations, the kind that couldn't be proven, only felt. She started with my kitchen. Every morning I'd find things slightly off salt, swapped for sugar mugs, moved to the wrong shelves, spices rearranged by color instead of use. When I asked, she'd laugh lightly. "Oh, Nora, you're so particular. Maybe it's time you let me handle the kitchen. It must be confusing keeping track of everything at your age." At your age. Those 3 words hung in the air like acid, eating away at my composure. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store to find Cassidy filming a home tour for her online followers. My house, Harvey's craftsmanship, my life's history was her backdrop. "This is where we're updating my mother-in-law's space," she chirped, gesturing toward the living room. "It's been such a challenge balancing modern design with, vintage habits." I stood just off camera holding a bag of flour and listening as she described my furniture as clutter, my heirlooms as dated relics. Her audience flooded the chat with heart emojis. That night when I told Marcus, he rubbed his temples. "Mom, she's just creating content. It's her job. She's turning me into a joke." "She's including you. You should be happy she wants you involved." Happy. That word burned in my throat. I excused myself before I said something I couldn't take back. The next day, I received a letter from our bank, an alert about recent account access changes. Cassidy had added herself as an authorized manager on the Caldwell Builders business account. My signature was forged perfectly. I knew because she'd practiced it once years ago as a joke. That night I found her in the kitchen, sipping wine, scrolling through her phone. "Cassidy," I said quietly, "why is your name on our corporate bank account?" She looked up, her expression calm, almost bored. "Marcus and I decided it was easier for me to handle payroll. You've been so stressed lately." "I didn't authorize that." She smiled, the kind of smile that made my skin crawl. "Are you sure? Sometimes you forget things." I stared at her. I never forget when someone crosses a line. She set down her wineglass. "Then maybe it's time we have a serious talk about your capacity, Nora. The company can't run on sentimentality forever." Her tone was soft, but her words hit like nails through wood. That night, I emailed our attorney, Atticus "Addy" Greer, a man Harvey had trusted for decades. The next morning, I sat in his office with a USB drive and a stack of printed documents. Addy leaned back in his chair as he flipped through the pages. "This is a mess, Nora. Fake vendors, forged invoices, personal purchases billed to the company, and your signature on account authorizations." "Forged," I said. "Every one of them." He nodded slowly. "You've been keeping records. Audio files, photos, bank statements, enough to hang her with her own rope." Addie's mouth twitched. "Good. Then don't confront her again. Let her think you're slipping. It'll make her overconfident." That became my strategy. I played the part she wrote for me, the forgetful widow, too soft, too slow. When she switched my medications, I pretended not to notice. When she hid my keys, I thanked her for helping me find them. But inside, I was taking notes. One Saturday morning, I watched through the kitchen window as Marcus helped Cassidy's father move a dresser out of the house. Later, he told me they were reorganizing storage. 2 days later, I realized what was missing: Harvey's old tool chest, the one with his initials carved into the lid. When I confronted Cassidy, she sighed. "Oh, that rusty thing, we donated it. You said you wanted to declutter." "I never said that." She tilted her head. "You probably forgot." Something in me cracked. "You have no right." "Actually, I do." Her voice sharpened. "Marcus owns this house now. His name's on the title. He signed the transfer 6 months ago." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You forged." She held up her phone. "Marcus signed everything himself. You can ask him." When I did, he looked ashamed. "Cass said it was just a formality. Estate planning. In case anything happens." "In case anything happens," I repeated, realizing the trap was nearly shut. That night I walked into the backyard, stood by the workshop, and stared at the dim outline of Harvey's initials carved into the wooden beam above the door. The wind smelled like rain and sawdust. My pulse slowed. My anger solidified into something cold and sharp. If Cassidy wanted a show, I would give her one, but it would be her final act. Cassidy didn't notice the shift in me. That was her first mistake. She thought I was retreating, shrinking into the quiet, pliable shell of an aging woman ready to be managed. But what I was really doing was listening, taking stock, laying traps. 2 weeks after the estate transfer conversation, I heard her on the phone late one night. Her voice carried through the hallway like the hum of a mosquito, soft, irritating, impossible to ignore. "Yes, Mr. Willard, I have the medical documents. Once Dr. Ellison files her statement, we can proceed with the guardianship petition. No, Marcus won't object. He's already worried about her cognitive decline." My stomach turned cold. Guardianship. That was the final step before she could legally control everything: my accounts, my house, my company, my life. The next morning, I called Dr. Ellison myself. She sounded hesitant, almost embarrassed. "Cassidy told me you'd agreed to a mental evaluation, Nora. She even brought signed consent forms." "I never signed anything," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hand. There was a pause. Then softly, "That's what I was afraid of." By the end of that call, Dr. Ellison had promised to double-check every signature Cassidy had submitted and to meet me privately. The first ally had joined my side, though Cassidy didn't know it yet. The second came in the form of Priyanka Shah, one of Cassidy's former colleagues, from her short-lived stint at a digital marketing agency. Pri reached out after seeing Cassidy's latest family wellness vlog online. "She used to brag about marrying up," Pri wrote in a direct message, "and about how easy it is to make people believe what they want to believe. I kept the Slack messages she sent me about your company. You might want to see them." The files she sent made my blood run cold. Screenshots of Cassidy chatting with a contact named at Waltar about POA by Christmas, liquidate the assets and clean exit. There was even a meme Cassidy sent, an image of a woman counting money with the caption, "Self-care is expensive." That night I printed every message and stored them in Harvey's old safe, the one Cassidy thought was broken because the combination lock stuck on the third turn. Meanwhile, her manipulation of Marcus intensified. She'd whisper just loud enough for me to hear, "Your mom's been forgetting her appointments again," or "She's mixing up numbers at work, what if she gets sued?" And Marcus, sweet guilt-ridden Marcus, believed her. The confrontation came 3 days later. He showed up at my door after dinner, shoulders tight, eyes full of worry. "Mom, can we talk?" I nodded, bracing myself. "Cass thinks maybe it's time you take a step back from the company entirely. Just until things calm down." Things I repeated. "You've been forgetful." The electric bill, the misplaced keys, that appointment with Dr. Ellison, I felt my chest tighten. "Marcus, those were all—" He held up a hand. "Please don't get defensive. I'm just worried. Cass says she found a really nice assisted living place in Pine Hills. It's not permanent. Just stop." My voice cracked like a whip. "You think I need to be put away?" He flinched. "No, she's lying to you, Marcus. She forged documents she stole from the company, and now she's setting me up to take control of everything." He shook his head slowly, his face full of pity. "Mom, listen to yourself." And that pity, that blind, patronizing pity, hurt more than any of Cassidy's insults. He left soon after, promising to check in later. I sat in the quiet for a long time, staring at the window reflection of a woman everyone thought was losing her mind. That was the night I decided to end it. The next morning I called Deputy Chief Rowan Price, an old acquaintance from Harvey's days volunteering at the City Planning Board. I told him everything, every forged invoice, every suspicious payment, every whispered insult. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said, "Only, can you prove it?" "Yes," I said, sliding the micro SD card from my notebook between my fingers. "I can prove every word." Within 48 hours, Rowan looped in Detective Addie Greer and the state's Financial Crimes Unit. They built a plan quietly, methodically, just like me. Meanwhile, Cassidy's behavior grew reckless. She started documenting my episodes on her phone, pretending to console me while secretly filming. "Don't worry, Nora," she'd coo as she held the camera close. "It's normal to forget little things when you're under stress." One night she got bold. She stood at my door holding a packed suitcase. "Since you've been having trouble sleeping, we thought it might be good for you to spend a few nights at Serenity Haven. It's a wellness center. You'll love it." I looked her dead in the eye and smiled. "That sounds perfect." Her face lit up. She didn't realize I was smiling because she had just given me her final confession on camera. By the end of that week, I had turned over every piece of evidence, bank records, photos, recordings, emails, to Rowan's team. The plan was simple. Cassidy believed she was orchestrating my downfall, but in reality I was building the stage for hers. And in just a few days the curtain would rise. Monday morning broke crisp and quiet, the kind of North Carolina morning that smells like pine and salt air. I woke before dawn dressed in my pale blue Oxford shirt, and the cardigan Harvey always said made me look like I knew something the rest of the room didn't. He'd been right. Today I did. Cassidy was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs wearing a silk robe, stirring her oat milk latte like a queen preparing for court. The light from the window sliced across her face, turning her smile into something knife-sharp. "Morning, Nora," she said sweetly. "Sleep well." "Better than you will," I thought, but I just smiled, like a baby. She leaned on the counter, her eyes glinting. "I've been thinking it's time we finalize the guardianship. I called Dr. Ellison this morning. She's ready to submit your cognitive report." I poured myself coffee, my hands steady. "That's nice, dear." Cassidy frowned. She'd expected resistance, not agreement. "You don't seem worried." I took a slow sip. Should I be? Before she could respond, the sound came, tires on gravel doors slamming shut, heavy footsteps on the porch. Cassidy looked up confused. "What's that?" "Probably your ride," I said softly. The knock came hard, authoritative. Then a voice. "Wilmington Police Department, Mrs. Cassidy. Rhodes Caldwell, we have a warrant for your arrest." Cassidy blinked, her smile flickering. "What?" I set my mug down carefully, like a gavel striking. "For fraud, forgery, and elder abuse." The color drained from her face as Deputy Chief Rowan Price stepped into the doorway, badge gleaming against his vest. Behind him, 2 uniformed officers entered, followed by a woman in a Navy suit, Special Agent Monica Delaney from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. "Mrs. Caldwell Delaney," said her tone calm but sharp, "you are under investigation for multiple counts of interstate fraud and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." Cassidy's breath hitched. "This is insane, Marcus," she screamed toward the stairs. My son appeared, bleary-eyed, barefoot, confusion written across his face. "What's going on?" "Marcus, tell them." Cassidy's voice cracked into hysteria. "Your mother's lying, she's confused, she's—" Rowan opened a folder and began reading. "We have bank records showing funds from Caldwell Builders diverted into shell companies you control: Rhodes, Social LLC, Seacoast Finishings, and Coastal Build Supplies. We also have video evidence courtesy of Mr. Walter's doorbell camera showing you and your parents removing property from Mrs. Caldwell's home at 1:14 a.m. Cassidy stumbled back. "That's not true." Dr. Ellison entered the house, then clutching her tablet. "It is, Cassidy. You forged my digital signature on those medical evaluations. You tried to make me believe Nora was senile." Cassidy's voice fractured. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, finally meeting her eyes. "You wanted to erase me, take my house, my company, my life. But you forgot something. I built this business from the ground up, and I kept every receipt." Her face twisted. "You set me up." "No," I said softly. "You set yourself up. I just pressed record." Monica Delaney stepped forward, sliding a folder across the counter toward Marcus. "Mr. Caldwell, you should see this. Your wife's alias, Sable Grant, connects to 2 prior fraud cases in Virginia and South Carolina, both involving elderly property owners." Marcus's hands trembled as he opened the folder. "Cass, what is this?" Cassidy's mask finally cracked. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered. "I just needed time to do what bleed us dry," I said. Rowan signaled to his officers. "Mrs. Caldwell, please turn around." Cassidy's eyes darted wildly, seeking sympathy that wasn't there. "Marcus, please don't let them take me." But Marcus just stood frozen, the truth sinking in like wet cement. The officers cuffed her hands behind her back. Her parents were taken next, escorted out the door, red-faced and muttering curses. As they passed, I felt an unexpected calm settle over me. Not triumph, not glee, just the deep, steady peace of justice landing exactly where it should. Cassidy twisted once more to look at me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear me. "I regret nothing." They led her out, the sound of her heels scraping against the tile like a retreating storm. When the door closed, silence filled the house. It wasn't empty, it was clean. Marcus dropped into a chair, his hands gripping his hair. "Mom, how long have you known?" "Long enough," I said. "I tried to protect you, Marcus. But she was never going to stop. He looked up, eyes glassy. She said she loved me. She loved control, I said gently. Don't confuse the two. Outside, the cruiser lights flashed red and blue through the kitchen window, washing everything in cold color. I watched as the car pulled away, carrying Cassidy toward the justice she'd earned one lie at a time. Dr. Ellison put a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Nora. Not many people would have fought back the way you did. Maybe I said, watching the taillights disappear. But when someone tries to erase you, the only choice left is to write yourself back in bold. That afternoon, I handed every remaining document to Special Agent Delaney. She thanked me and promised updates on the federal case. When everyone left, the house felt strange, like a wound freshly cleaned but not yet healed. I made myself another cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and looked out at Harvey's old workshop. The sign still read Caldwell Builders since 1992. 30 years of work nearly stolen by a woman who thought age made me blind. But she'd learned too late that I see everything. And as I sat there in the golden afternoon light, I realized something simple and powerful. Cassidy had taken almost everything I had, except my will to fight. And that was the one thing she couldn't steal. The week after Cassidy's arrest felt unreal. The house was silent again, not the suffocating silence of fear, but the kind that hums with relief. The constant hum of her curated life, the phone ring lights, the fake laughter, the rehearsed apologies was gone. All that remained was air clean and still. Marcus stayed mostly quiet, moving through rooms as if each memory carried a new weight. Some mornings I found him standing in Harvey's old workshop, running his hand over the worn bench. I don't even know what was real anymore, he said one evening, his voice raw. She made me doubt my own mother. You weren't the first person she fooled, I told him gently. You just loved her too, honestly, to see the edges. He nodded, shame heavy in his shoulders. But the shame wasn't mine to carry anymore. 2 days later, Deputy Rowan Price stopped by. He stood on the porch holding a small cardboard box. Inside were a few of Cassidy's confiscated belongings tagged for evidence. We're sending the rest to the FBI, he said. But you should probably see this. At the bottom of the box sat a silver flash drive, sleek, labeled with a single word in Cassidy's handwriting, safe. I waited until Rowan left before plugging it into my laptop. The files loaded one by one: shell company documents, bank transfers, encrypted email chains, proof that Cassidy's scheme stretched far beyond us. Each folder was named after another state: Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee. At the end of the list sat one final file: Wilmington, plan, final. I opened it. Inside were notes, timelines, even a typed script: Cassidy's roadmap for destroying me, step by step, her manipulation of Marcus, her staged videos, her plan to have me declared incompetent by Christmas. Every line cold and deliberate. And near the bottom, one sentence in bold font stopped my breath. Once POA is finalized, liquidate assets and transfer proceeds to the Haven. I didn't know what the Haven was, but I knew one thing: this wasn't over. That night I called Special Agent Monica Delaney. You need to see this, I said. Cassidy wasn't working alone. Delaney's tone shifted instantly. Keep that drive safe, Mrs. Caldwell. It may connect her to the larger network we've been tracking. I smiled faintly, sliding the drive into my notebook beside the hidden micro SD card. Don't worry, I know how to keep records. As I sat back, the faint hum of Harvey's workshop fan still turning in the next room, I realized something. Revenge wasn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it was order, paperwork. Evidence lined up like dominoes, waiting for one small push. Cassidy had built an empire of lies. I was going to help the FBI burn it down, one file at a time. They thought they had silenced me, but what they didn't know was I was just getting started. If you've ever been made to feel small in your own home, if someone you trusted twisted your kindness into a weapon, then you understand what I went through. Don't let anyone rewrite your story. Keep your receipts. Protect your peace. And if this story hit close to home, I want you to stay with me, because this isn't the end. Cassidy's network runs deeper than anyone guessed, and the next chapter will reveal just how far her lies went. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over.